Hello, you're listening to Talking Africa, the podcast that takes you behind the news from the continent. My name is Nicholas Norbrook. Don't forget, for all your news and analysis from Nigeria, South Africa, Ethiopia, and much, much more, please do visit our website, theafricareport.com, and sign up for our newsletter so that you don't have to miss a story. Today on the pod, an extended conversation with the CEO of Kenya's largest bank, Joshua Oigara. And you can say hello on Twitter at Joshua Oigara, spelt JOSHUAOIGARA. We met at our annual event, the Africa CEO Forum, held this year in Kigali, and you will hear it in the background hum of deals being struck. We talk about everything from today's protectionism to how you build for scale. Oigara stands up for the new Nairobi-Mombasa railway, fighting back against the idea that Kenya is drowning in debt. And he explains what he intends to do next after 2 terms in the group CEO seat at KCB. But we started talking about the opportunity that KCB sees in Somalia.
I mean, it's an economy that finally will get itself out of the war. Mm-hmm. Correct? Now, the war is now basically terrorism.
Sure.
There's a lot of, and that's a natural country for Kenya. It's a neighbor that we have. It's not any different from South Sudan or Uganda.
Yep.
The only problem South Somalia has is the risk of terrorism. And once you can be able to deal with managing the financing of that terrorism and have registration of persons, putting a form of government in place, we will always have a financial institution. There is no global financial institution in South Somalia. But it could be 5 years.
But a lot of money transits in and out of the country, so I guess you can see the opportunity there.
I mean, $10 billion moving about last year.
10 billion in and out, the total.
That's a huge amount of money for us, and that's what we have a view.
Yeah.
These other billions of dollars nobody knows, and it's a full cash economy today.
What just give us a comparison for like Rwanda, for example. I presume 10 billion didn't transit in and out of Rwanda.
Oh, that's a lot of money. This economy is $10 billion. It's $10 to $1 billion. So I would think that Somalia is bigger because of the role of the United Nations in the country and the African Union and also the global trade. That's what I would say in that country. And also they have a lot of diaspora.
Right.
Somalia has nearly maybe 30%, 40% of the people are outside Somalia today. And they're in Europe, they're in America, they're in Australia, and they're sending. So remittance is a big part as well of that economy. But I would say that Somalia is it's not something that is urgent for us. The DRC, Ethiopia will be. That will make us into 8 countries. Our medium-term ambition is to be in 10 countries.
Right.
Mostly.
And Ethiopia and DRC would be very
strategic, catalytic for us.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Those 2 countries are bigger than the current East Africa, right?
Yeah.
Community. Yeah. They are more like 160, 170 million people.
Yeah.
But why? So why we have not the acceleration of growth is because trade has reduced. Mm-hmm. Now we've done a lot of things right. Correct? So we've done in Kenya, we're trying to address border issues. We're addressing common access of individuals into the economies. We managed to do the infrastructure, right? So if you look at the Northern Corridor, the highways, we've done access to power. Mm-hmm. Power investment has been much, much bigger. So what you call the enabling macroeconomic factors have been achieved.
Yeah.
But trade is minus.
Right.
Correct? Why? Because we haven't integrated from a policy point. It's one thing to do a road, but you can stop the truck on the border for 5 days, for 6 days. Nobody's going to be interested in this bullshit. Nobody. And that's where I think naturally we need to be catalysts as private sector to challenge government on the same table with actions to progress integration for the region. So first, and then we have a lot of blocks, a lot of communities, a lot of, what do you call them? There's a lot of trade economic blocks in Africa. Yeah. I estimate there are maybe 15, 16. It's COMESA, it's ECOWAS, it's East Africa, it is SADC. I mean, you don't even know. And some countries belong to 4. So that we need to realign. And that's why I love the continental free trade area for Africa. It
Yeah.
works. Then it eliminates the relevance of all the other blocks that are
Yeah.
available today. So that's the reason why you have not seen businesses expand Nicola into the region. There have been very few investments.
Although I imagine if the countries, just internally had, strong domestic economies, they'd got a strong judicial framework, the state was functioning,
Correct.
then trade would find a way,
No,
The issue of regional economic communities, would melt away.
No. Trade must be very intentional. Because remember that there are also national champions, the rise of national champions, which look at their own development as businesses to the detriment of the bigger state development and economic empowerment. So I'll give you an example. So you could try and build a business in Kenya and sell across the region. So you talked about the African Airbus, if I use as an example.
Yeah.
We want coffee. You may have a Rwandese coffee exporter who is able to sell products on the platform. Okay, it could be Alibaba or something else. Yet there could be another one from Kenya that we need to connect. But because we want to protect the market for ourselves, we frustrate the Kenyan coffee from coming. Trade disappears. So we forget. So we have a very narrow nationalistic interest, and this is the risk of protectionism that is coming through. So yes, Rwanda can increase trade by 100%, but what is the scale? If the scale is 1 million tons every year and Rwanda can only produce 10,000, there's no impact. And that's why trade fails, because of very aggressive national champions. So if you integrate, then you have regional champions, you have continental champions. This is what companies do. This is what Total is doing, isn't it? For France. This is what people like Borol Logistics is doing for France globally. You run enterprise across the globe. So trade, if it's left by itself, and I give you the view that investing in infrastructure, technology, access to individuals, and making sure that there is the ease of doing business is facilitated, EAC has done it. Regional trade has reduced. It's very strange. It's opposite the EU.
Yeah.
You are regional champions, right?
Yeah.
So,
But at the same time, the history is so different. And all of those countries you mentioned, like France,
Correct.
had a period
correct.
when it did very, very fiercely nationalistic policies.
So now,
And then once they got to a certain weight in the economy,
True.
then they opened.
So we have to unlearn some of the beliefs that we have.
Right.
And the move, the global shift, the wind is blowing today around protect, defend.
Yeah.
But you must also equivalently scale. Correct? And look at an example of India and China. Correct? It's okay to close your markets, but you also need to have capability to build quality, to build for scale, to go international and be competitive. When you do those four, you can then be able to deliver a competitive product to the markets.
Yeah.
But if you close for the closing sake of it, you have no production, you have no capacity, you have no quality, Nicola, it doesn't matter. And that is Africa's greatest challenge there.
I totally agree. China did something very clever.
Correct.
With the opening and closing of markets.
Correct.
It would open it for a while.
Correct.
To allow skills, finance,
Correct.
experience in.
Correct.
And then it would shut it for a while.
Correct.
And let the local players bloom, and then it would open it.
And then number two, which is something that we don't speak about, the other thing that enables trade is skill and talent.
Right.
Okay? If you want to build a product, it must be globally competitive in terms of what it delivers, the outcomes, and the outputs. So if you think about the skill, so yes, you may get the skill in Nairobi. If you go to Burundi, you don't have the skill. If you go to Ethiopia, you don't have the skill. Without the skill and competency, you lose the game of quality, competitive, and scalability. So what China has done is to build in the last 15, 20 years the best skill that you can get across the world. You can get it in Europe, you can get it in North America, you can get it in China. No doubt. You can also get it in Southeast Asia, in Singapore, in South Korea. You can't get it everywhere. So without skill, then how do you build? France is, why do you build the Airbus? You don't build it because you're France. You build it in many countries because of skills. And that's the challenge you're going to face ourselves. Can we make the best branded coffee today that go to Starbucks today in all the countries? The answer is no. So we expect a raw beans, a raw tea, a raw cotton, correct? And who is the biggest exporter of coffee today? Germany. Germany has very little coffee the last time I checked.
Yeah.
Who is the last exporter of tea? United Kingdom. They don't grow a single tree. So that's where, so countries must address this too, in my view. But I think the opportunity, these collaborations, like through the CEOs Forum, we get a chance to get African champions. If there's one thing I'm very excited about in this network, whether it's through the network forum or the CEOs Forum, the event, is you get people with common vision. You have got the people that matter the most in putting foreign direct investment into the continent. They are African champions, they're invested in here, they're global champions, they invest in the continent. You can invest with them together and they share the ideas. I think the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see a complete change in the way we build enterprises in the continent.
It's an optimistic vision. I share it.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to the difficulties of running a regional banking chain.
Correct.
Nigerian banks got their fingers burnt by over quick expansion in West Africa.
Correct.
Even experienced expanders,
Correct.
we can call them that, like Attijari Wafa Bank
Correct.
in Morocco, they're having trouble integrating the Egypt purchase of Barclays. They are, they're not propped up by the Moroccan government, but they're lucky to have the share structure that they have.
True.
Let's put it that way.
True.
How have you avoided similar problems of overextension? And what problems have you faced?
It's been extremely difficult. And one of the recipes for failure for institutions in the continent is chasing expansion for the sake of speed. These markets are vastly complex. African markets are very disparate institutions. Countries are very disparate. They have different kind of profiles. There isn't a single African ethic in many of the countries. We may be closer in some blocks, but generally, Gabon is as different as Tanzania. Correct?
Yeah.
Uganda is as different than Mozambique. Correct?
Absolutely.
So, whereas we are a national champion in Kenya, the region is a bit complex. So we are very, very deliberate and conservative in our expansion internationally. We see the risk. So we are very measured. So we don't pace expansion. We look at the country's profile, we look at the returns on investment, we look at our partners in the local, and largely we expand because of our customer trade patterns. So who is our enabler for expansion? Our Kenyan champions, our East African champions who are expanding within the region. So if, for instance, the aviation, the largest airline is our customer, they go to Rwanda, they set up an office in Rwanda, they have customers, we partner with them, we open an institution. Correct? We are largest oil company. It is in Kenya, it's going to Uganda, it's going to Tanzania, that's how we open up. In that case, then we avoid the issues of stamping a foot on the ground and planting a flag and not growing. And a lot of African businesses have actually lost growth opportunities, destroy their businesses because of chasing growth for the sake of it. And I think it would be different in Europe. But in our market, I think we see Africa as Northern Africa as one block. We see West Africa as another block. We see East, we see Southern Africa, correct? And then we have this huge part of the Central Africa area. Yeah, and that's how we see it. So do we set up a business in West Africa? Most unlikely. Do we set up a business in South Africa? Most unlikely. Why should a South African customer today believe me as a Kenyan commercial bank? You have to compete with African giants like Standard Bank, like Absa Bank, like FNB.
Yeah.
They've been there for years. What difference? And I don't even have the capital today to deploy to match. So that's how I see so we've been very meticulous and deliberate. Yeah. But we've been successful. So in Rwanda, we came in and did a greenfield, set up from scratch. Today we are playing. So our ambition is to play in many markets, either the largest bank or in the top 5. We always want to play in the tier 1. We're not always there. Yeah. So in Kenya, we are playing in that league. In South Sudan, we're playing in that league. In Rwanda, we're playing in that league. In Tanzania, and Uganda, and Burundi, we're not. See? So that's how we have to manage our ecosystem of our businesses where we run. But we will face the same challenges like Africa Transnational Banks. EcoBank is another, which is in 34 countries.
Struggling, closing branches.
Absolutely. And I think there is value to consolidate the businesses where there's common market capabilities for financial institutions. And we don't see, just like, remember that we are 4 times, Nicola, the size of Central Europe.
Right.
Yeah. If you just think about the complexity of our markets, generally cities, if I were to leave Nairobi to